Hello, and welcome to another episode of Life is a Piano. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am happy to have sat down and chatted with pianist Emile Pandolfi. Now, I have never met Emile, but I am glad that we were able to connect through this podcast. Someone reached out on his behalf to schedule different interviews for his upcoming book, Play It Like You Mean It. And, they even sent over a bunch of press materials. So I thought I'd tee up a couple things about Emile so that you get an idea of who he is and what he's all about. So I'm reading directly off of this thing. Emile Pandolfi is a professional pianist and entertainer with over 40 years of performance experience. One of the top-selling pianists in the music industry, he has sold over 4.5 million albums and garnered more than 750 million streams online, and has performed hundreds of concerts worldwide for thousands of fans. Although serious about his playing, Emile is never serious about himself and believes that every moment at the piano should be one of joy, which tees up his book quite nicely, because Play It Like You Mean It, the little short synopsis that was written, it says, so you play piano. Now what? You've practiced the classics and improved your skill. Now elevate your playing to transcend melody and tell a story that reaches the hearts of your listeners, not just their ears. In this lighthearted and humorous guide for any serious piano student, pianist Emile Pandolfi shares his holistic philosophy that harmonizes method and mindset to help you communicate through every chord and make your music resonate more passionately with your listeners for an encore-worthy performance each time you play. In the book, you'll discover how to effectively infuse emotion into mastered techniques, a unique approach to memorizing a new piece and overcoming stage fright, life lessons to rekindle lost inspiration, 3 necessary ingredients for honing natural oral acumen and playing by ear, and the beginner's course into the commercial music career. Change your mind and change your playing with this piano student's constant companion. Read Play It Like You Mean It to learn the language of piano and speak through every push of the keys. All of those things you'll definitely hear in this conversation. He is such a pleasure to talk to, just still so full of joy, 40 years into a career, and always finding ways to delight in making music and sharing music with others. If you liked today's conversation and you want to support the podcast and all the other podcasts that I produce, you can head on over to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. There, you can contribute at different tier levels to get early access to podcast episodes in audio and video formats, exclusive merch, and more. You can also head over to DutcherSnedeker.com to hear everything else that I am currently working on and view a bunch of videos and, connect with me at all parts of the internet. And don't forget to share, like, follow, subscribe. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube or listening to this in the audio version, whatever way you're able to interact with the platform, it helps me out. Leave a review if you're able to do that. It also is very helpful. All right, I've teed up enough of this. Let's get right into the conversation with Emile Pandolfi.
There we go.
Oh, yes. There you go. The magic of technology. How are you?
I'm good. I'm busy, and I'm excited about having written a book.
Yes.
I just learned to read and write a few years ago.
Good time to write a book. Yeah, I'm definitely grateful for, as busy as things have gotten. I was very happy since February. I had a residency at a venue for like 4 months, and then had a lot of wedding work over the summer and some stuff with various groups.
Were you teaching and performing when you said you had a residency?
Oh, yes. I was, there's a venue at this downtown Grand Rapids building called Studio Park. The venue itself is called the Listening Room, and it's kind of a Chicago style, well-treated listening room space, which I guess is why they named it that. And they had, when there was limited capacity seating, they turned it into a dining space, and I played Fridays and Saturdays there from about the end of February till the middle of June, when they started doing their outdoor concerts.
Seems to me when I'm listening to some of your podcasts, you do a lot of electronic keyboards. Do you? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I do a mix of different keyboards. My background, I started with classical, and that was my undergrad. I did classical performance, and then went on to get a master's in jazz. And kind of along the way, I fell in love with, this different sounds that you could get from different keyboard instruments. So I like the spectrum.
I've been pretty much a one-trick pony with acoustic piano. I've got a Korg M1, and I have a couple of electric pianos, but I almost never use them. But when I do sit down to the Korg and just play that first universe sound, you get wonderful ideas. You just touch it, and it sounds like you're smarter than you are.
Right. Yeah, I felt that way with I bought this software that a lot of my friends who do a lot more production than me, they recommended for different, software synthesizer sounds, Omnisphere. And I loaded it up. I picked one of the first patches, and as soon as I hit it, there was just this kind of swelling of color, and these the layers on top where it was like doubling what I was playing, and kind of sprinkly, sparkly stuff.
That's wonderful. I mean, it really, truly is. I sometimes think I should just bite the bullet and get over the learning curve, and because it would give me such brand new ideas. I mean, when I sit down to it just on an idle, well, I've created one or two pieces of music on it, but mainly just for the purpose of enjoying that sound, I immediately get ideas that naturally I don't ever get at the piano.
Yeah, and that's kind of what drew me to, this. I'm actually at my office right now at Third Coast Recording Company. I'm kind of a session musician here, but I also am trying to translate the stuff I learned from working in live sound the last few years into working in a studio. And they've been really nice at, providing a space, and I pay rent, but it's still, it's offset by the work that I do here. So
that's great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, looking at your book and getting that initial email, there are a lot of things about Play It Like You Mean It that resonated with me as someone who, I've been studying piano since I was 8. I just turned 29. And I, 2 degrees in it, you'd think, oh, he knows everything. And then when you get out of school, that veneer of oh, I'm playing for all these people, and this kind of self-contained place, you get out into the open world, and there's a lot of opportunity, but it's hard to know how to navigate all of those spaces sometimes.
It's true. And for me, for the longest time, I mean, many, many years, I've been 29 a couple of times by now. I got out of school. I loved every minute of school. I mean, I quit school about 3 months short of a master's degree.
Okay.
Just walked out just because, no real reason. Why did you? I don't know. Felt like a good idea at the time. So I don't have a master's degree, but I have a bachelor's in piano performance, and it's always been classical since I was age 5. But I had to shed my dependence on my teachers, even 15, 20 years earlier. I said, what would my teacher say if I did this or that? And over time, I found I could break rules and do things that weren't supposedly that you're not supposed to do. They weren't kosher fingerings or ways to use or embellishments, things like that. But anyway, I figured those things out. I'm a slow learner, but I figured them out eventually. And that's what's in the book.
Yeah, it's great that you bring up the fact that a lot of people who study piano, there is that residual what would my professor think about a choice I'm making or how I'm playing or Yeah, even little things like, the correct technique, correct, whatever's the most comfortable tends to feel the most correct.
Yeah.
And yet we, however far removed we are from that environment, there's still that residual kind of, that pressure that we've always put on ourselves as performers, but it's kind of heightened when you start thinking about the hours you spent learning from someone. And even if they were kind and had, the best for your career interests at heart, there's still that part of you that wants to like make them proud, or like well, I need that validation to have my career feel good.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating journey, but you break a few rules and you say, hey, that sounded pretty good, and then nothing happened, nothing bad happened, and I used different fingering from the correct scale fingering, and eventually, if you work hard enough, I suppose your technique becomes what it's supposed to be, which is just only there to support the music, and whatever finger is handy, you use that one. And at some point, your technique should be like, wow, he makes it look so easy, because it's no technique, it's just playing.
Right.
But it's a lot of that is mental. It's not. I mean, physically, you may be right there. You can do anything physically, but your mental says, I can't do that, or I mustn't do that. I think mustn't is worse than can't.
Right. Yeah, it's like you are constantly having to grant yourself permission to just experience the music you're learning.
To this day, and I mentioned just in passing in the book, I mentioned that sometimes I'll do a particular fingering, and I say, and a little tiny voice says you shouldn't do that. I do it anyway, but the fact that I did it anyway means I still had a mental challenge there. I did it anyway.
Right.
Here I am this old, and I'm still doing it what my teacher said not to do. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and for you, it's, keeping a career in classical music. I feel like a lot of my friends who I studied classical music with, they keep it as a part of their personal enjoyment, which you even mentioned. I've started reading at least, some of the book, and you mentioned how, if you're looking to just find joy in the practice of sitting at a piano or playing music for yourself, like, that's great. Everyone should have that opportunity. And then, you clarify immediately, like, okay, now we're going to talk about, the people who want to play as a profession or a career. But go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say how a lot of my friends, that, they were classical performance majors, they still perform, but they've had to, just because of life, they find a partner, or they have a child, and they find a job that can help support that. And then, maybe they have a recital every season, or they play at their church a couple times, over the summer. They carve out those moments to keep pursuing art. But it's a different story to have, a classical music background that continues a career for, many years.
Many years. And I have, even though my entire education was classical, everything I do is my arrangements of movies and musicals. That just seems to be what my strength is, and I love taking a beautiful song or a beautiful melody and then putting my take on it. That's just how I be,
Right. Yeah, I was listening to some of the recordings, and I do like how you treat the music, you serve the music with the arrangements and the playing just so succinctly and so well, and with like a color and character to it, that there's it felt like a presence that's not like, hey, I'm trying to flex my arranging chops, or hey, I'm doing a some like reharmonized version where can you even hear the melody? Like it's very enjoyable to listen to, and a reminder that the whole reason people enjoy these things are the melody. It's like if you can't understand or hear the melody, it's hard to, have that same appreciation.
It's a fact that when I was growing up, and we were four siblings all practicing in this little house, basement, bedroom, wherever. They were violinists and I was a piano player. And my mom would be in the kitchen doing dishes or something, and she'd say, "I can't hear the melody." And if I don't hear the melody, what's the point? And I think of that as a kind of a metaphor for life.
Yeah, what's the point if you can't hear the melody? The thing that's so like pure and clean. That's definitely something. I have a group, Earth Radio, that we do kind of a blending of styles and genres. Like people have compared, some of what we do to like Frank Zappa, or, trying to figure out how to, distill what we do. It's kind of soulful music with a lot of character borrowed from other genres. But within all of that, we have that challenge of, okay, we need to have, what our singer's singing, or, something in the arrangement that grabs people's attention, that isn't just, flashy and, just chops. We have been slowly evolving how we write into, delighting in all the different styles that influence us, but keeping the soul of what we're doing translatable, I guess, to the audience.
I think when you decide whom you want to play for, like, are we playing for I'll just call it a lay audience, meaning they're not musically trained themselves, then they need something to hang on to for sure. Now, if you're playing for other jazz musicians and you're just having a jam, it's absolutely wonderful, but it takes intellect and education to appreciate it. Whereas a listener it takes the emotional content and the melody to hang on to. I happen to want to play for, quote, regular people, untrained musicians, and it's just what it's always been that way since I guess since my mom said, "Hear the melody." Put that in my head.
Right. Well, and I feel like it's important nowadays to, post everything shutting down last year and a lot of music just, or places going without music for months, to have those familiar places for people to come back to, in songs and in interacting with artists is even more important now.
Yeah. Well, you know what, when I think about it, I always think of playing for people. I mean, even when I practice, I think, what would the listener like to hear? If on my own time, I'll practice some Rachmaninoff or something that's really a challenge and I'm never going to get, and I'm going to enjoy the challenge of learning it. But I don't want to put that in front. Just like I'm not going to play. I played the Bartok Sonata in college. Well, I'm not going to play that for people. That was in a student recital, and that's where it belongs, or a very. I played at the. Well, never mind. I played the Bartok time or two for an educated audience, but in fact, I'm thinking of the playing as giving them a gift, and so you want them to give a gift that they'd actually like to open, something they'd like to listen to, and then while they're there, you need to be there nurturing this thing and making it. Holding their attention. You don't want to hope they pay attention. You want to give them something worthwhile to pay attention to. Anyway, that's me blabbering.
No, luckily this is a podcast where that's totally warranted. But yeah, it's definitely been, as I've talked with artists, in person on podcasts, just about, coming back into spaces with, audiences that are ready to, they're ready to unload the stress and the worry and all the things, or delight in the joys of live music again. It's been really refreshing and a good reminder that, like, yes, we as performers can, scratch that performing itch a little bit with, playing and recording and, collaborating with other musicians in studios or, even remotely. But having that like very simple peer-to-peer, like I'm playing, the audience is receiving it, but then they're also giving their energy, putting their, experience and things into the performance that makes the music.
It's so interesting with me. I mean, with any performer I know, but from my viewpoint, it's something that you can actually feel. If I'm in the middle of an arrangement in in a solo concert, I do a 2-hour show, and it's just me. Occasionally having a guest singer, but I'm in the middle of an arrangement and I can perceive this is not. They're not listening to it, and I shorten it because I'm the only guy on stage, so I can do what I want. But
Right.
I just know, sometimes, wow, they are really enjoying this, or sometimes it's just not getting across. Either I'll change, improvise a little bit, change it around a little bit, or I'll cut it short and get on to the next tune. I mean, but you certainly can tell that interaction on a kind of a radio wave level. It's very real and we all know it, but I don't think it's been quite measured yet.
Right.
There were always radio waves, but we couldn't tell they were there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. To like, as as performers, we also have the ability to not just, I think of how many times bands just make set lists and, all right, we're playing these tunes and you're taking a solo, but to have that kind of freedom to, gauge like in the middle of a song, okay, I think they're enjoying this. I'm going to, maybe I'll extend this part a little bit or, shorten it. If, like you were saying, if they're not really into it, you can just create this little vignette out of a longer piece and then move on to the rest of the program.
As a matter of fact, most of my arrangements I never write them down, but I learn them, and so I play them pretty much the same way. But often when I listen to something I recorded maybe 10, 15 years ago, and I've been playing it, I listen back to the recording because I haven't listened for 10 years. And I think, wow, it has really evolved. I didn't even realize it. But it's I play a part of a melody and then a kind of a parenthetical what I have to say about what I just played, and it naturally evolves as the more I play it, the more I found this worked, this didn't work. But honestly, sometimes I'm really surprised at how different today's performance of that same tune is from the recording. Just one of those things, because it's a living, evolving art, isn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like that's, that should be not even like a goal you would write down, but just it happens naturally just from repetition, but also just experience.
Yeah.
It's
right.
It's a good reminder for me, my background, having learning all this repertoire to get better at the instrument. I never felt like 100% invested in the repertoire, only because as, a young student, you just, that, okay, I'm learning this stuff. Parts of this are cool. This makes my teacher happy. I can do this recital. And now, after being out of school for 3 years and starting to, crave that kind of creative time, since I've been, doing a lot of weddings and cover gigs this year, I'm starting to pull, books that I, of just pieces, just to see what types of music I want to learn from and really add to who I am as a performer, as a solo artist.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest gifts that you get from college education is how those great composers made those. You think, I think, because I accompany singers every now and then, I actually go back to Schubert as art songs, because how did all these accompaniment ways of accompanying a vocalist, and he's, the best in the business. So you learn tricks of the trade. You learn how Rachmaninoff made these huge sounds, how Chopin did his embellishments, and and it just becomes a part of the fabric of your thinking, so that when you go to be, you're being you. But it's kind of, I guess it's kind of like, if you read the great books, you don't read them to check them off your list. You read them to see, how did Dickens express that? He made such a visual picture in my mind, so that the more you have in your vocabulary, musical or otherwise, the more facility you have with the language, the more you can express yourself, and it's just pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and thinking of what you said about reading a book to learn from who wrote the book rather than just check off a classic or something. I think of there's kind of a culture nowadays, especially with online advertising. You see these type of the all-encompassing supposedly knowledge gurus that they have a room full of books, and it's like, these are all my books, and it's like, have you read all those? Do you value the knowledge or just the quantity of books?
There's a wonderful statement from Woody Allen. He said, one time I took a speed reading course and I read War and Peace in 10 minutes. It involves Russians.
That's great.
It is great. That's very funny. But I think I'm a excuse me, with literature, I'm a fairly slow reader because I'm tasting the words, and I go back and read that sentence. Pardon me, read that sentence again, because I just love the way he said it, and I think, oh my gosh, how did he even think it so that I can see the action happening? It's so brilliant.
Yeah, I do. I've been realizing that I need to get back into more reading for pleasure, because I used to do it so often, and then I think just with school you get inundated with textbooks that some stuff you want to read, but most of it is just homework.
yeah It's and just life in general. That's why, if you can, I don't know, in your young years, get as much, the more life goes on, the more things get in the way. As you say, if you get a partner or a wife or a husband, and you have kids, and it's just, right now, I'm on my computer so much every day that I think I just want to get to the piano, but I'm not wasting time. I'm not surfing. I'm not just, doing nonsense, but it just takes that much time. And I keep wishing I had time at the piano. I just like to just say, all I'm going to do today is play the piano on and off all day, whatever I like. Some for me, some for my business. But normally I have to play, just as you do. You have an event coming up, whether it be a wedding or a concert or whatever, but you have to prepare for that thing, and there'll be requested songs, and you think, I don't really want to learn this song, but I need to, and it's my business, my job. I understand. So, I just long to just sit. It's like being on vacation when I take time off from playing what I have to play for the event. What do? I go play stuff that I want to play, but I'm still at the piano if I have my druthers.
Right. I had that moment the other night. Actually, here I stayed late because I know how to lock up the building, and a long day of work, putting together whatever, sending emails, video editing. And then I just went into the main studio room where they have like a baby grand, and I just sat and and just played it for probably an hour, just not even thinking about like, oh, I should really brush up on this repertoire. That it was just like, nope, I want to just play. And I hadn't done that in probably weeks.
Do you know the song from Ray Charles and Billy Joel, "Me and My Baby Grand"? If you don't, you should listen to it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'll definitely listen to it. I grew up listening to Ray Charles. My dad was a huge fan, and he played soul and Motown alongside the the classical music that he grew up with, because all of my uncles on his side of the family are all also musicians. So I have a lot of people in my family that can, whether it's direct knowledge or just, observing their careers, I can kind of glean info on how to better navigate certain parts of it.
That's great. That's great. Were some or all of them professional musicians?
Yeah, I have. Jeffrey Snedeker is a horn professor at Central Washington University,
Hmm.
and also, I guess, teaches math here and there.
Oh my.
And Andrew Snedeker is a an oboist with the Naples Philharmonic in Florida,
Huh,
um,
that's great.
and is an educator as well. And then my uncle Greg Snedeker, who lives in Massachusetts, he he's kind of who I see my career being modeled after in terms of like, I guess, family, because he mentioned to me that he thinks of his life as kind of like a mixing board where each channel is a different, part of the music industry that he likes operating in. And at any point, he can kind of bring up or down the levels of what he wants to focus on, whether it's, private instruction, composing for a dance company that kind of tours around the world for different festivals. He's a cellist, a pianist. He has a studio in his house, so he records mainly acoustic music and jazz. And there's a lot of a lot of experience, and a lot of my cousins from those families are all either in their undergrads right now for music, or one of them actually just finished his master's. And it's a
That's a very familiar story because, and I bet you all of them are good at what they do. I have three sisters, and some relatives. Well, my one sister lives in Santa Barbara, and she's in a gypsy jazz band. She's a violinist. My nephew plays gypsy jazz, and he tours with a band. And everyone played something, but those of us who went for a career are really good at it. The other ones just, they had it and it was part of life. But there are several of them. One nephew is a first trumpet player in the Raleigh Symphony. My sister in Cary, North Carolina, has a music school there. She's a violinist. So it's a similar situation to you, that you grew up not just surrounded, but you just absorbed music as the most normal thing in the world, day after day. And every one of these people is classically trained, like I imagine, I'm sure all yours were.
Mm-hmm.
So then they may go off in different directions or not do music at all, but they have that classical background and they can always appreciate fine art. Because I think when you study fine art in one, whether it be visual art or dancing or music, the fine art is called fine because it's very fine. I mean, it's a fine wavelength. It's not rough and coarse, And I think the appreciation of fine art is the greatest gift your parents can give you.
Yeah, I definitely look back on, growing up and realize how normal music was, and expressing myself musically was, because I think of I still have when, maybe I'm at like the airport and I'm just waiting for the flight and I'm drumming on my knees or something to something I'm listening to or something I'm thinking about. My parents kind of early on, they bought me a this little toy Yamaha piano, and they actually just showed me last Christmas. They were digitizing old like VHS camcorder tapes, and there's a video of me just on the I can't even walk yet. I'm on the on the living room floor, and I'm like hitting buttons until I find the sound I like, and then I hit other buttons until I find the backing track I like, and then I'm not really playing notes, but I'm like hitting the keyboard in rhythm, and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that was like 3 years old.
That's funny because that's how I am with my Korg right now. see what happens if I press this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the whole, I joke with people that they ask if I'm just getting to know them and they're asking me about what I've done in music. I try to emphasize that it's like it's always been a part of my life. Think about anything you've done your whole life without really thinking about it. Like you learned it, and then, like walking, talking, it's like, that's piano.
Yeah, I agree. It's a second language, and the parts of speech are arpeggios and embellishments and, different pauses, silences. It's very much like speech or like sculpting or like drawing. It's interesting too. I did a little bit of pencil drawing just for my pleasure years ago,
Sure.
and I also accompanied dance classes, and I took ballet from my roommate who was a ballet instructor, just because I wanted to get familiar with it. But it's interesting that wherever I may express my creative juices, they all come into the classical realm, classical ballet. If I were a dancer, which I'm not at all, I would be a ballet dancer. I wouldn't be a modern dancer or a jazz dancer. And when I draw, it's representational. It's not abstract. It's just who I am. But it shows itself wherever you direct your creativity. You have to learn the techniques of that discipline, but you come through however you come through. It's like my improvisation is different from yours because of the personality, and
Right.
it's a wonderful thing. I mean, we have that outlet to say what we believe in so many different ways. I mean, some people don't have that, and that's an incredible gift.
Yeah, and it makes me think about where, I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and there, I have friends who work for it's called the West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology, and students there are really engaged with, everything from learning an instrument to like the foundational stuff you need to start doing production at home, to understanding, the basics of like setting up live equipment. And for a while it was just like a specialty type of program where you could apply to get in, or you could do a summer program. And now it's, because of how the arts and how it's being funded in the city, funds keep shrinking. There are a lot of schools who, they only get like a couple weeks at that center, and that's the arts for their school.
Oh, it's too bad.
And it's crazy, because I think about how many kids, how many friends of mine that, we were friends outside of band class, but band class was the time where we could, feel like we could express ourselves more than, math class or.
Right. Do you know that one of my, I'm not an activist. I almost wish I were a little bit more, because one of the things I would like to get behind is, I really, in my heart of hearts, believe that music and art should be part of the regular curriculum, because then you wouldn't take money. You don't take money away from biology or from English or from science. You take money away from the arts, but that's because, and only the talented kids do it. Well, I had to take math, and I'm certainly not talented in math. I mean, I sucked, but I had to take it, and I'm so glad I did. And I think the math kid might suck at music, but they had to take it, and they'd get a little bit of understanding, a little bit more appreciation. Their lives would be richer, just like my life is richer for having taken math class.
Right.
And I can almost balance a checkbook, but I mean, there, excuse me, if it were like, excuse me, I got something in my throat. If it were like you and I experienced that, it's just part of life. It's not, and then you wouldn't have to do it after school, or you wouldn't have to go to special places. All of those are available, just like they are for sports people, but they're part of everybody's. I think it's just part of education, music and art, just there. And some love it, some hate it, just like anything else.
Right. Well, and there was an added layer when I went to high school. I went to Grand Rapids City High School, and at the time, it was a tiny school. Like my graduating class had 88 people in it, and then the middle school was also in the same building. So 6th through 12th, there was, I think, about 680 students, and in that environment, there was a lot of like a lot more peer-to-peer helping with, in band and orchestra and all the arts things, jazz band. And one year, in an attempt to really just to try and consolidate the arts and save money, the administration, they took each Grand Rapids public school and they designated an art to it. So Ottawa Hills had a theater, so they were the theater hub, and then City High School was the music hub. And the theory behind it was, now we can, all of the cream from the crops of all the different schools will consolidate, and it'll create a more robust, cross-pollinated environment. But all it did was it made people, because they took it out of the curriculum in the day and put it after school. So if you wanted to do, let's say you went to another school and you wanted to go to City High School to do music, you had to take a bus across town, and then you do band for, like an hour 15. And then there wouldn't be busing back to your school. You'd have to either, wait for a parent, or you take public transit. And then, so yeah, it exacerbated time for people's day. It made people choose between sports and music instead of having both. And it was just very messy and really difficult on all the students and staff.
That's another thing. Even if it's in a good way, students who are, quote, talented they're separated from the rest. Even if it's a good, even if you think they're a good thing.
Right.
It's just like they should just be everybody. I mean, everybody does all of it, and some excel at this and some excel at that. And like, what's the big deal? And then you wouldn't be allotting special money to this and special money to that. It's just, I know I'm going on. I already said it, but it's a pet peeve of mine. And
and even just I thought about this the other day, talking with another pianist friend of mine, Jordan Anderson. He and I were talking about like how art can inspire people, but then that, some people, they see that kind of, a high level of art or an inspiring level of art, and they think like, oh, that person's not even human. Like, how do I interact with them? They probably don't. How do I even support them? And it's like, no, we're human beings.
Yeah.
Still need the same things you all need.
Yeah. I've always encouraged I have 3 daughters, and I encouraged them to, when they went to college, to go to the other departments. Like, go see one was an English major, and one's a philosophy, just got a PhD in philosophy. But go to the other department, go to the art department, go to the theater department. You get like free entertainment and by the way, if you're not in college, when are you ever in your life going to see Waiting for Godot? What would you pay money for that? But there it is, where you can see the rhinoceros, you can see avant-garde plays, you could, in University of Connecticut, where my one daughter went, they have the biggest puppeteer marionette training in apparently in America anyway, if not in the world. And I thought, go see a puppet show. I mean, when are you going to see a puppet show the rest of your life? You're just not. But college is such a great place if you would interweave these different departments, and then go to the science fair and see how they make rockets. I don't know how to make a rocket.
Yeah.
but some brainiac kid does,
Yeah. Well, and I think I feel like it's why my parents let me, in middle school, I did science Olympiad, and not that I'm the best scientist, but I enjoyed, learning about, I think my competitions were rocks and minerals, awesome aquifers. So we had to study groundwater and how it, how it can get contaminated, how it moves. And, and those early things, it even though, I didn't go on to be a scientist, it's still informed like, okay, now I know this is something I can take into my life as, someone living in Michigan, where a water conservation is a huge thing, to be able to kind of articulate the reasons why you might not want to dump, chemicals into a tiny river that feeds a bigger river that ends up at the lake.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and those formative years from first grade through college, or that's like probably the only time you're going to be exposed to it. Yes, it's available. I could go right now and I could go on great courses or great books, but do I? No, because I have a life to live and a career to do. So when you have those opportunities as you're growing, that's the only time I learned about osmosis. It was sixth grade or something. That's how much I know. You just heard my entire biological education right now.
This one word.
That's right. Oh, there's a comedian used to be on Saturday Night Live called Guido Sarducci. Do you remember? He was called Father Guido Sarducci.
Yeah.
He said we have what I call the 5-minute university, where we teach you in 5 minutes what the average person remembers after 4 years of college.
That's great.
It's a very good idea.
Yeah, I agree that with school, you know, if you're not trying, you know, like, first of all, just as a music student trying, and even if you fail, it's, you know, you might obviously feel devastated, but there's that moment to try and fail, and you can still go to your classes tomorrow. You can still learn from your teachers. You can still improve and grow. It's a place that, you know, if you've ever thought about a music thing, like try and engage, you know, I was in like jazz combos. I was in the Grand Valley's new music ensemble doing like contemporary chamber music and accompanying different instruments, and, you know, a lot of saxophones. I had no idea the repertoire for saxophones was this cool blend of, you know,
French style saxophone is like a cross between a violin and an oboe, that beautiful, clear, classical sound on the sax.
Yeah, I'd never heard the saxophone performed like that. And then the blend of kind of the, you know, the Desenclos and the De Crook and the you know, earlier like Sangelet, mixed with some of the more, you know, aggressive extended techniques, you know, the slap tonguing and the the circular breathing, and
circular breathing just blows my mind. I don't know, and it probably, if you do it, it probably blows your mind. You know, or blows your brain out or something. I can't be good for you.
Like, you have
like
to breathe normally.
Do this with a double reed instrument. It can't be good for you.
Yeah, it just looks like. I should just ask my uncle, like, are you truly comfortable playing the oboe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I enjoy the parts of, you know, the fruits of the labor from school. I feel like I've, you know, everything that you could think of as being super stressful is thrown at you in that environment. And then when you get out, there's a sense of like, all right, I'm really well equipped to handle some of the pressure that comes from regular performing work. But there's also that aspect of like, okay, I spent hours and hours practicing and I'm good at my instrument, but nobody really taught me about like marketing or, you know, promoting myself.
Yeah. I found out that, just like everybody does, I found out the hard way. I wish I knew now that the music is a business, and that you wouldn't balk at that fact. It's like, gravity is there. I don't like it, but there it is. Well, music is a business if you're going to make a career out of it. And it's no use hating it.
Right.
It's just, you know, I'm fortunate that my wife, Judy, is a business person, and she's run our business pretty much from cocktail. When I was playing cocktail piano, there wasn't any business.
Right.
I just had a job. But now that I play concerts and I record and so forth, she created the record label that we have, and she's pretty much managed my career for the last 30 years. So I was very lucky. There's in my book, I have a chapter called "You Have to Have a Judy," And you don't have to marry one, but you have to have one. You better hire one or have one or be one yourself, because, and that's what, as I say, even with Judy, I spend most of my time at the computer, just like we all do, because running any business is a 40-hour week, just as a business. So when you're running a business and playing the piano and, doing whatever your skill, I think, naturally, we all love honing our skills at the instrument. Oh my gosh, that's so much incredible, rewarding fun. But you don't get to show it to anyone if you're a painter, you can paint in your closet, but if you don't get it in the gallery, nobody else is going to see it.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely been a luckily a good point of discussion for a lot of folks around my age in West Michigan. They understand, especially after last year, they understand, like, all right, if I'm going to make a concerted effort to be, an artist and make that a career, there are things that things I have to do to present myself. There are opportunities I need to take. There are things I need to say no to, even if I want to, like, fill up, a schedule with work. Sometimes you just got to say no to an opportunity that doesn't serve, your finances or your artistic self-worth, or the vision you might have for a band or a project. So it's definitely a discussion I've seen happening more in the last couple years, but it's also, been spurred on by entities, at least in West Michigan, like the Michigan Music Alliance. It was started for that reason, to try and educate the growing populace of artists in the state about, everything from, sync licensing to social media to, whatever resources they can gather. They provide it for free on the website. There are in databases that are constantly being updated with, venue lists or ideas for promotion or helpful, things, even things like helpful streaming tips for all the people who had to try streaming last year.
Well, there's what I have noticed over so many years. There's so much advice and good. Just real, genuine advice, like what you've been talking about, that is available. I had a point and it went away. There's a quiz show for people my age called "What Was I Just Thinking?" It was there, I promise. It was a thought. It was very important. But I like that information is available, but psychologically you have to not be averse to it. Like I've said, I'm not a business person. Sorry, somebody better be. You better be, or I better be. It's you want to have a career, well, somebody better do it. In my book, it's called "Play It Like You Mean It," because I wanted to talk about. I've always had a knack for getting my emotion across the space to the other person. I just know how to do it somehow. From the time I was little, my music communicates. But I wanted to talk about people who play really well, but somehow they're not sure how to get it across the space. But then after I was writing most of it, I thought, I've had a very successful career. It's how to have a successful career without ever being famous. Great, that suits me fine. And so I had a whole second part of the book, which was about a career in music. And a lot of it has to do with getting your mental objections to being a business person. It's just so dug into those of us who feel like, yes, I'm an artist, and I'm sensitive and I do these things, and there are other accountant people who do the business. Well, sorry, if you want to have a career at it, it's a business, just plain and simple. I wish that every one of us had to take at least one semester of business course. Just like I think school children should have music, I think I should be required to have a business course, and I wasn't. There was no time in my college career, 6 years of it, that I ever had anything like business course, and it shows.
Yeah, it's so, I've even heard from, professors I used to study with that they're trying to implement these types of, 101 courses in business based on their own
Right.
experiences, getting endorsements or working with a
Mm-hmm.
label. And, there's always that, well, we don't know if people, because they present it as an elective instead of part of the
Yeah,
curriculum.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah.
There. That's the thing. There is so much available online. Thank goodness. I mean, it's tons of good information, but it's just not the same as if you have it in a classroom and a teacher teaches it to you, or even when you're working online, if you have someone to work with. Um, I know for me, I'll try to learn even a new technique with I have Studio One and I have Pro Tools, and I'm used to Pro Tools, but I'm trying to learn Studio One, and it's just like I just want to record. I want to press record and have it sound good, and yeah, and it's a new, new it's a new discipline, if but if I had a teacher doing it, just show me. It's a lot easier. I don't know. I'm babbling.
No, it's it's part of the reason I got this studio or office at this studio.
Hmm.
Part of it was it's already, at least treated with these panels, but
Yeah, yeah,
um, it it gives me an opportunity. At any point, I can, I know how to turn on the main board in both studios. I can go in and like practice mixing or practice. I could set up a piano and do an over
yeah.
the top miking of it just to practice that type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I'm fortunate I do have a studio away from the house, so it's a separate building. I mean, it's about 10 minutes away. So,
Mm,
and I come here every day, and I'm the only one here, and it's my sanctuary.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very nice to have. I realized last year trying to bring the studio into my house wasn't going to work for a variety of reasons, and
Mhm.
having this opened up,
Oh, yeah.
it's a no-brainer.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it takes a tremendous amount of mental discipline to work within an environment where the phone's ringing and the uh, cars coming by and all that. And in this place, happens to be in a little strip mall that's not visited very much, and then it's quiet, it's spacious, and it's nice. Yeah, I don't know how I would live without it.
Yeah, having a place to retreat to focus, and but also, it just kind of shut out the life for a second, shut out the noise of
Yeah.
everything going on. It's yeah, it can be overwhelming. Well, and I, I'm always trying to remember that, each of these steps along the journey, trying to, check in and be grateful for the things that are happening, because there's so many times where you get that, like, oh, why can't we move tickets like that band, like we should
Mm.
be able to have this opportunity too, or whatever way we try to have doubt creep in. It's it's
Well,
nice to
what?
refocus.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I've We're all guilty of it. I certainly have been. uh, Comparing yourself with others it's a pointless exercise because there's always somebody slower than you, there's somebody faster, there's somebody better, there's somebody worse. It just and besides that, we have no idea how long it took Michelangelo to sculpt David. Did it take him a year? Did it take him 10 years? Did it take him 3 months? He got David in the end. And I
Right.
think of that when I learn a piece of classical music, which are still challenging for me. If it takes me 2 years to learn it, I have it for the next 50 years. So, and when the audience hears it, they don't know if I learned it yesterday or 10 years ago. Who cares? And if you've got it, that's the thing I wish I had done. I wish I had kept all that repertoire that I did in my junior senior recitals. I wish I'd kept it up, but I didn't. You still have a chance to do that.
Yeah. That's
Visit it
actually
every now and then.
right. Well, that's some of the that was some of the books I was pulling off the shelf. Is like, oh, I learned some
Yeah.
Hinastera and like Debussy, and let's
And
relearn
now
those.
Play it again, Sam.
Yep.
Try.
Yeah, try to do. Yeah. Well, and it was interesting, like reading a little bit about, you know, your career. Um, the fact that you've bridged kind of the, you know, with your music career spanning pre-smartphone, you know,
Yeah.
robust internet infrastructure, and then also like having such a strong, you know, online listening audience. I'm curious of like that whole process of, you know, you're putting out records and then suddenly streaming services pop up, and now you have like, you know, a strong audience buying CDs, but also listening online. I don't know if that was just like meeting the right people, or you sought out the right types of people to work with you on those types of things.
Well, it's interesting. Part of it is two things. One, that I'm doing cover tunes of, again, thinking starting 40 years ago, let's say 35 years ago. I made my first record in 1990. So I was doing tunes that were still on the tip of people's tongues. They weren't current, but they were the old standards that people were still listening to, old standard. And even now, people like Michael Bublé are bringing them back, and Lady Gaga and all these people. So those standards are standards for a reason. They keep coming back. So I was playing familiar songs. It was a time when the gift shop industry was brand new as far as CDs went, and the way it really happened for us is that I didn't do anything. I was in the FLC, the Flippin' Lucky Club, you know. But my wife sent off a cassette at the time to. She went through Billboard, not Billboard magazine, but they have a catalog of all the distributors in the country, and she looked at all what would it be, solo piano, easy listening, whatever, and she found 8 distributors that distributed that kind of music. She sent them each a cassette, and one of them responded, only one, and they ordered like 30 cassettes. And I thought, oh great, I could sell 30 cassettes at the cocktail bar tonight, you know. But then they ordered more and they ordered more, and in the first year, but they were distributing them not to record stores but to gift shops. And in a gift shop, the people who are going to gift shops in the first place are the kind of demographic that we play to anyway. There would be probably 40 and older for the most part. They're looking at gifts, so it's in a quiet environment, but this music playing. Well, in this case, they'd be playing my CD and maybe 10 others, just a total of maybe 10. And the most natural thing is, oh, I like that. Who's playing? And there it was for sale at the counter, right there. I mean, at the counter by the cash register. That was the marketing model. You have something like 10 artists. You put their CDs in a rack at the counter, and it's almost an impulse buy. And after that first order of 30, they ordered 60, they ordered 300. And by the first year, they had ordered 30,000 cassettes. So in the first year, we sold 30,000 cassettes. We didn't have a, my wife created a record label that is called Magic Music, and that's our record label. I'm the only one on it, but it's a legitimate record label.
Yeah.
And we had to do the manufacturing and so forth. Well, we couldn't pay to manufacture because you get paid 90 days later, 90 days net, you get paid. So we didn't have the finances, and we couldn't get a bank loan saying, I play piano and I think I'll sell lots of cassettes. So next. Yeah. So the distributor said, we will manufacture them and pay you a royalty instead. So we worked out a deal with them. And they were our distributor for like 15, 20 years or something like that. But they had all the connections to literally thousands of gift shops across the country, but each gift shop would buy maybe 5 or 10 or maybe 20, sometimes 100. And because it was being listened, it was being heard. There were cover tunes that people knew. It was solo piano, which at the time, solo piano was happening. It's not so much anymore. It was still on streaming, certainly, but
Right.
it was on the radio, on public radio, not public radio, but normal radio. It'd still have some solo piano. So, I mean, so a lot of it is timing and luck. And we didn't do what anybody else did. We just, we found this business model because we heard about it. And my wife did all the work of getting it to them. And then, as I say, 1 out of 8 responded. The other one more responded 6 months later, but we had already made a deal with this one. So that got us going. And then it was really word of mouth. Pardon me. And it was all over the country. So we kept selling more and more and more. Pardon me. Excuse me. In 1 year, in 1997, I think it was, we sold around 360,000 CDs in 1 year.
Wow.
There were CDs by that time, I guess. I don't remember, but it just blossomed almost effortlessly. And then on the strength of that name recognition, I was able to do some concerts, which first of all, we rented a space. My wife did we rented a space locally, a performing arts center, a small, like a recital hall of about 450 seats, and which had a Steinway Grand in it. And I did my first concert. And and then we just it was really, mostly it was word of mouth. I guess what I'm saying is that there was no plan as such.
Right.
And I do write a lot about it in the book. And it's more in detail on how we went from here to there. But the thing is, whatever environment you find yourself in, like now it's a digital environment, you have to do that. My wife got us onto Apple Music within a year or two after it became available. I mean, we were, she didn't wait to change from, pardon me, from hard copy to streaming. Soon as we knew about it, she started studying, and it was hard as a dickens to get on streaming at the time. It was really time consuming, and maybe 6 weeks later they get your song.
Right.
By now we have something like 400 songs that are streamed because I have 30 albums. So, but it's over all those years. Anyway, so that's encapsulated. It's looking at what your environment is and taking advantage of whatever the opportunities are that exist there. And it was all brick and mortar at the time. So we were, and I got in record stores as well, but we were kind of in the easy listening kiss of death part, because the kids are going into record stores or looking for the top 40. So we didn't sell anything much in record stores, but it didn't matter because there was the gift shop industry that has died away for various reasons, but it doesn't really exist anymore. Except Starbucks. Like if you go to Starbucks, they have maybe 5 artists, and that's all they sell. So naturally, those 5 artists are going to do well.
Right.
But they're a different kind of artists from me.
Yeah, I do. That's so interesting because especially you saying, taking advantage of the environment that's around you and seeing how you can, make a living out of something that as much as people support what you do, as an artist, there are a lot of people who are also, they might have their own fears or insecurities with how they tried to pursue art as a career, or maybe they worked a job that was a passion project and then it didn't go so well. And now they're trying to, they're thinking they're being helpful, but they're also, kind of trying to knock down your, attempts at trying to build up a career. And I'm a big advocate for, like building using your surroundings when, people are more than welcome to move to, New York and Chicago and all these places. And I've always felt that if I can't, find some level of success in a career, where I grew up, like how could I possibly, think about just kind of leaving and having those same struggles, but in a place where I have significantly less support.
Okay, I have something important to say about that, and it's in the book too. I think I know of a person. He's a friend of a friend, and I can't think of his name right now. But he's like the biggest thing in the Philippines. He's an American singer songwriter, but
Oh.
he's a superstar in the Philippines. The thing is, you could go to. A, I, I always lived in LA for 15 years, but I didn't start and I always worked there, but as an accompanist in various things.
Hmm.
But it wasn't until I went to Greenville, South Carolina, where it happens that I grew up. That's where I live now, that my career started to blossom because I was a big fish in a little pond. And if you could find some little place that thinks, oh my God, you just have come down from heaven to our little town. I don't agree that you need to be where it's just like there are people who have a crappy job. They say, I hate my job. Well, you can get that same crappy job in Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands. I got a job out of college. I went to the St. Thomas Virgin Islands, and I lived there for 2 years. I worked in a jewelry store. I could have worked in a jewelry store in Greenville, okay, but I worked in the jewelry store because I didn't have a piano job at the time. And I loved it, and it was in paradise. It was in the Caribbean. What if you want to go to Alaska? There, you get a roommate or two to help pay the rent, and they have waiting table jobs there. They have crappy jobs. They have probably one cocktail bar,
Right.
that you get your foot in the door. There's always a way if you think way outside the box. I think it is correct that by now I have a lot of support locally and it's been wonderful here in Greenville. But I lived in England for a couple of years. I went at the time you could get a visa for 3 or 6 months or something, and I ended up playing in pubs here and there. But I was in England and I always wanted to go there. So, I think when you think outside the box, you have to go way off the charts. Do you want to go? They have if you're waiting tables to pay the rent, why not wait tables in the French Riviera? Why not?
Right.
Why not? Or more locally, South Carolina, Hilton Head Beach is one of the greatest beaches in the world, really. But you could wait tables there, or you could, and they're bound to need some entertainment somewhere, or they have dance classes. If you're a pianist like you are, you could play for dance classes, or you could play for weddings, and you can play for, everybody has events. So there's a world full of opportunities as long as you go way outside. You think, wait a minute, I never thought about playing internationally.
Right.
I never thought about playing for I played, this has been about 30 years ago, but I played for a vaudeville show that occasionally did silent movies. So I played for silent films. And how could that happen? Well, it just happened, so there's always something you can do if you start putting your antennas out farther. Excuse me. I sound like the Godfather right now. I think that happens to old Italian men. Start talking like this. I'd appreciate it if you would get a job.
Right.
It honestly was. It's just.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially, I feel like I'm more, and I've been telling more people about, people I know in other cities that I've been friends with for years. And, I've always in the back of my head or, when talking to them in the past, and they're like, oh, you should come visit in New York. You should, come stay for a week, or, visit a couple times a year. Like, I'll show you around the city. We can go to some spots. And I always have that, okay, yeah, it's great. And then, oh, I'm in school. Oh, I have this. Oh, this is happening. And since, last year when we couldn't really go anywhere, that created this desire in me to actually take up my friends on these offers. And, I'm now trying to be better about, like, if I'm going to plan something, I'm ultimately my own boss. So if I want to do these things, I need to, put my foot down and be like, nope, this week in March is blocked off. I'm going to go see people in Colorado. Nope, this, weekend in September is blocked off. I'm going to New York. I want to make those trips happen so that I can continue to learn from all the, the people in all these different scenes, and just kind of absorb more of the totality of music.
I think it's a great idea. And I have a sign on my door that said, always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. And excuse me. And you meet things could be going along, just blah, blah, blah. And some blip on the radar happens. Meet one new exciting person, or somebody just happens, don't you play keyboards? We need one here. I mean, it's just, these things happen if you're open to them. You can't depend on them, but you have to allow them into your life.
Right.
And I think what you're doing, I think, is a great idea. But just think, doing exactly what you're doing, where would you like to be if you could be anywhere in the world? Where would you like to be doing that exactly thing that you're doing now? Because once you get to that new environment, there are new opportunities that you never thought of. Somebody said one time, he said, I hope in life that life gives me everything I want, and I hope for you that life gives me everything that you want too, because you may want stuff I never heard of. And so, there's so much out there.
Yeah,
you never heard of.
It's so, I've, even in the little sense of like how much music is out there, there's just so much.
Yeah.
Like I do kind of a funny, just like, I don't know if it's a series. I've just done multiple examples of this where I list some absurd way somebody's made money, and it's like, or like made a career, and it's like, hey, this person did that. Like, why can't we, explore our passions and make a career out of those?
Yeah. My dad's mantra was, if everybody's doing it, do something else. And, instead that was the entire opposite of 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. That was the saying. But yes, they can. They're not wrong, but it's like when you're going to work, everybody's going on Ventura Freeway. Well, you go the back road and you have it to yourself. It might take longer, but that's just been a kind of a metaphor.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to just look at not just a music career, but leaving yourself open for life's new opportunities. Even those little things, like maybe you're on a vacation and you've never done, I don't know, parasailing, and now you're going to do that. Right. Or
I did that very thing. I was in Mexico, and there were just guys on the street saying, "Hey, anybody want to parasail?" I thought, I was young. I was your age, and I was your age, but I wasn't old, but I was stupid. and so these guys that I never heard of said, "Here, a few dollars, they'll take me parasailing." And I did, and I went, and I survived. Yeah. And I'm glad I did. It's just like, I'm in parachute jumping once. I'll never ever do that ever again. What was I thinking? But I did it. And at your age, that's a good thing to do, because you don't get to do them later on.
Right. Yeah. Try now, and then learn and keep growing. And
like, if you survive.
Yeah. If you survive. Jump out of a plane. If you survive, then you can.
When I did jump out of the plane, I asked the guy, I was in my 20s, and I said, from however high we are, how long does it take to get down? He said, 2.5 minutes, or if your chute doesn't open, 16 seconds. He really said that.
Wow.
And I still jumped.
Yeah. You're like, all right.
Because I'm an artist.
Yes. Boldly going where
no sane person would go before.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, maybe I'll have to jump out of a plane soon. I don't know.
Well, it's where you land. If you land in the French Riviera, how bad could it be?
Right. Yeah. That's entirely true. And I'm growing more open to the idea of, I have a lot of things that I'm doing that I love being invested in this area. And I see a lot of, friends my age kind of in the same boat. There are also those same types of people thinking, all right, I need to tour purely for the sense of getting an idea of like, maybe I want to set up shop in, this other state I've never really given that much thought to because I went to this city and had a great experience, or, I visited a friend in the mountains and, enjoyed that environment. I've seen many people do that, or many people who've moved because of last year. They've made a point like, all right, I kept saying I wanted to live in the mountains. I'm going to go do that. Or I wanted to live somewhere warmer. I wanted to live in the forest. Like, people are starting to realize they can break those kind of cycles of living in the same spot and moving on to new things.
It's interesting because I have a whole chapter on that topic in the book. And so when you have a chance, you can look at that. It's interesting how to kind of formalize that in a way in your mind that you may actually do something about it. And honestly, if you just went to a place and it career-wise didn't work out, you still would have been to that place. Like you say, wow, living at the beach or living in the mountains or whatever your thing is was such a wonderful experience. And you need some kind of a job. Day jobs are great. I was a janitor early on, and I loved the fact because I could pay my rent. Huh, what a relief, I was still playing piano at night for like $25 or something, which couldn't pay the rent. I did maintenance at the apartments where I was living in order to trade for some of the rent. So, but it was a gift to me to have those. It's just because when I didn't have those jobs, I was just stressed all the dickens. I mean, what am I going to do? It's a horrible feeling, and I remember it well. But so those jobs are not, damn, I have to have a day job. No, it's first of all, it's a day job, and most of your playing are night jobs. So lots of people have two jobs anyway.
Right. Yeah. And that's been a big part of discussions too, because I try to talk with, whoever I'm talking with on podcasts, or, a lot of the people I've talked to have been friends in the scene or in the Michigan scene or people around the country. And they're, some of the people I talk to, their only music is they have, they have a solo project in a band, and they might play 3 or 4 shows a month. And the rest of the time is, they have a day job that they're comfortable with. It pays their rent, and then they can, spend more time on the art because they're not having to worry about the financial stress of making art earn you a living.
Right. It's a great way to be. And again, it evolves, and you keep your eye on what's going on around, and it evolves, and you see an opportunity and you go for it. I mean, some of them just don't pan out. But again, I've been so fortunate that my wife is a very good business person, and I might tell her, I have this looks really good, I want to do that, and I'm all excited about it, and she says, we'll talk about it later. And she does the research and finds out it's total nonsense or scam or nothing, or just right. But I get to play. I want to play for this, I want to play for that, I want to play for everybody. Well, sorry, honey, you can't. Not allowed to. Yes, dear. So early, you're not there yet, but at some point in your life, you'll learn to say, yes, dear.
Right. The different kind of yes.
Handy phrase.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this has been such a wonderful conversation coming in.
I really enjoy talking your head off, I know.
No, it's totally fine. And you're the first guest I've had that hasn't just been me reaching out to a friend. It's been a nice experience just chatting with you about your career, and I'm excited to read your book because I there's always something to be learned from any artist who's put in any amount of time to like making art a career, and it's, you know, a lot of knowledge that I'm sure listeners and other people who will read your book will enjoy.
Learn from old people.
That's the tag of the book.
Right, yes. The fact that they're still around, they must have done something right.
Right. They're still doing it.
I'm really enjoying this. This is just a bright point of my day. That's great.
Yeah. Where should people find what you have a website? Is that the main source of?
It's actually easy if they can spell my name. It's just, you know, it's EmilePandolfi.com, and the Facebook. I have a Facebook fan page and have a YouTube channel. I have a Spotify, and you know, all the social media. And by the way, my daughter handles that for me, so I'm surrounded by people who do the hard stuff. So
that is awesome.
And it's all just EmilePandolfi.com, Instagram, Messenger, whatever else.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I definitely want to have you back on at some point to, you know, just keep chatting and, you know, these stories and experiences. So much to learn.
A new song I learned.
You're right.
if I do.
Yeah, I'll try and learn something before that myself.
No, okay, and you I'm hoping will send me a link to hear you play.
Yes, yeah, I have. You know, my website has a lot of stuff, but I'll also send, you know, just links to things I'm on.
Great meeting you, and
yes,
I'm sure we'll talk in the future.
Yes, that would be great. All right. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks so much for checking out this podcast episode today. So wonderful to talk to Emile. So many great stories, great bits of insight and wisdom, and things that will help me kind of reinvigorate some of my passion for creating music at the piano. I'm looking forward to carving out some time this winter to just spend some time sitting at the piano and creating some new music. So if you enjoyed today's podcast episode, again, you can head on over to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker to support. You can also support by following all the socials and checking out everything that I'm posting on my website, DutcherSnedeker.com. And we'll catch you next time in another episode of Life is a Piano. Take care.